Okay, this is quiz 6. The first question says use the chain rule to find the derivatives of the following functions. The first function is f of x is equal to e to the x squared plus 6x all in the power. Okay, now to begin with, notice that f of x is the composition of two functions. I'm going to call them r and s, where r, the function r of x, is e to the power of x, and s of x is x squared plus 6x. Okay, so now we just need to apply the chain rule, which tells us that f prime of x is equal to r prime of s of x times s prime of x. Now, r prime of x, that's just e to the x, and s prime of x is 2x plus 6. That's the power rule. Thus, we know that f prime of x is e to the x squared plus 6x, that's r prime composed with s of x, times the derivative of s of x, which is 2x plus 6. Okay, now g of x, again, it's the composition of two functions, and so I'm going to name those again r and s. G of x is r of s of x, where r of x is the square root of x, and s of x is x squared over 2 plus x. So then we get r prime of x. Now using the power rule, this is x to the 1/2. So it's 1/2 x to the negative 1/2. And s prime of x is, the 2 comes down and cancels with this 2, so we get x plus 1. Okay, now we just need to use our composition, our chain rule, excuse me, and we get that g prime of x is r prime of s of x, so it's going to be the square root, it's going to be 1 over 2 times the square root of x squared over 2 plus x, and then times x plus 1. Okay, now finally h of x, here there's actually three functions that we're composing. There's the cube, there's the sine, and then there's the 1 over x. So let's name those r, s, and t. So h of x is r of s of t of x, where r of x is the cube function, s of x is sine function, and t of x is 1 over x. Okay, so now we just need to find the derivatives of these. R prime of x is 3x squared, s prime of x is cosine of x, and t prime of x is negative 1 over x squared. Okay, so now we're going to apply the chain rule actually twice. So we'll get that h of x is r prime of s of t of x. Now we're going to then multiply by the derivative of what's inside. Well, that's still the composition of two functions. So we get s prime of t of x times t prime of x. Okay, so now if we plug all those together, we're going to get 3 times the sine of 1 over x squared, that's r prime of s of t of x, times s prime of t of x. Now s prime is cosine of t of x is 1 over x, so cosine of 1 over x, times t prime of x, that's negative 1 over x squared. That's our answer. Okay, now the second question says the position of a particle moving along a line, say in the x direction, as a function of time is described by the function s of t is equal to t squared minus 4t plus 3. They ask, when is the velocity 0? Okay, to begin with, we need to know how to find the velocity given the position. So if our position is this function, the velocity is the derivative of the position function, which is just 2t minus 4. That's just the power rule. Okay, so now we're trying to find when the velocity is 0. Well, that's when 2t minus 4 is 0. Now that's just a simple equation. We solve, we get 2t is equal to 4. which implies that t is 2. Okay, now let's just, so we have kind of an idea what's going on, let's draw a little sketch of that, the graph of the velocity. So if this is our t-axis, this is just a linear function, right? It's just a line. So we know that it's 0 at t equals 2, and then this line has a slope of 2, positive 2, so we're going to look something like this. Okay, so now they say, when is the particle moving forward? When is it moving backwards? One way we can interpret this is, when is the particle have positive velocity? Okay, so that is, when is 2t minus 4, or the velocity, greater than 0? And when is 2t minus 4 negative, or less than 0? Okay, now clearly you can see, if you look at the graph, it's positive exactly when t is greater than 2, and it's negative exactly when t is less than 2. We can solve these inequalities really easily, and we get that 2t has to be greater than 4, or t has to be greater than 2. That's for moving forward. Okay, for this other one, when is it moving backwards? 2t minus 4 has to be less than 0, or 2t has to be less than 4, or t has to be less than 2. And that's for when it's moving backwards. Now, what is the acceleration when t is equal to 2? Well, acceleration is just the derivative of velocity, which the derivative of 2t minus 4, that's just 2. So that's our answer.